In the serene town of Maple Ridge, two seemingly perfect couples hide secrets that tear their worlds apart. When a shocking murder rocks the peaceful community, passion, betrayal, and hidden tensions come to light, unraveling friendships and exposing the truth. This is the story of how a tragic murder shattered lives forever. The Smiths, James and Kathy, and the Coles, Marcus and Vivian, were like two sides of the same coin. They grew up together, sharing everything from laughter to tears. Their childhood was filled with adventures and secrets, with a special hideout where they could escape the world. It was their safe haven filled with things they loved. They promised to always be there for each other, a bond forged in trust and loyalty. As they got older, life started to change. They wanted to experience new things, to see the world beyond their small town. It was like they were birds ready to fly from the nest. Even though it was hard to say goodbye, they knew it was important to grow as individuals. They promised to stay connected, to carry the memories of their childhood with them. It was a bittersweet moment, filled with both excitement for the future and sadness about leaving behind their closest friends. Years passed, and life took them on different paths. When they all met up again, it was like old times. Everyone was happy to catch up and share stories about their lives. But deep down, things were changing. Kathy and James started to feel something special. They liked each other a lot, but they were scared to ruin their friendship with the group. So, they tried to hide their feelings, pretending everything was normal. Meanwhile, Marcus and Vivian were also going through something similar. They too had developed feelings for each other and were keeping it a secret. It was like a big game of hide and seek, but with hearts instead of people. Their friends could tell something was different as things started to feel weird between them. They noticed how Kathy and James would look at each other and how Marcus and Vivian acted around each other. They were always acting strange and making excuses to hang out alone. Finally, they couldn't keep it a secret anymore. Kathy confessed to Marcus and Vivian that she and James were dating, but they didn't want to upset the group. To their surprise, Marcus and Vivian admitted they were also in a secret relationship. Everyone was shocked at first, but then they started laughing. It was a crazy situation, but it also showed how strong their friendship was. They realized that trying to hide their feelings had actually brought them closer together. They had shared a secret, and that had created a deeper bond. From that day on, their group was even stronger than before. They had learned a valuable lesson about honesty and trust. And most importantly, they had found love in unexpected places. Their bond deepened, and so did their dreams of a future together. Marriage came knocking, and they opened the door with big smiles. They were best friends, so it seemed like a perfect match. But things aren't always what they seem. They thought they knew each other inside and out, but people change. They forgot that everyone keeps growing and changing over time. The Smiths were the talk of the town. Everyone thought they had the perfect love story. James was a successful accountant, and Kathy owned a beautiful shop. They were always together, holding hands and smiling. It looked like they were living a dream life. But the Coles were different. They were quieter and more private. Vivian has a hair salon, and Marcus was a teacher. They loved each other, but they didn't show it off like the Smiths. People thought they were boring, but they were really just happy with their own little world. Slowly, things started to change. The Smiths weren't as happy as they seemed. They started arguing more, and James would disappear for days. Kathy started to notice things were wrong. She would find strange perfume on James, and he would come home smelling like alcohol. Kathy knew something was wrong. She knew James was cheating on her, but she didn't want to believe it until she saw it herself. Kathy returned home from work, exhausted and longing for the comfort of her own bed. She had hoped to find her husband, James, there. They hadn't shared the same bed in weeks, as his frequent business trips kept him away. As she walked down the hallway, a peculiar sound caught her attention. Her heart pounded in her chest as she approached the bedroom door. With trembling hands, she opened it, revealing a scene she never imagined she would witness. James was engaged in a passionate embrace with another woman, their bodies entwined on the bed they had shared as a couple. The shock and betrayal were evident on Kathy's face. James, startled by her intrusion, looked up with a mixture of surprise and annoyance. The woman, startled by the sudden interruption, let out a piercing scream as James lost his balance and fell. It was a moment of chaos and disbelief, like something out of a dramatic movie. Kathy's worst fear had been realized. She had always worried that her love for James was not enough to keep him satisfied. Now, she was confronted with the painful truth that her fears were justified. The woman, visibly upset, stumbled out of the room, leaving Kathy alone with James. James, quickly regaining his composure, dressed and followed the woman out. This wasn't the first time Kathy had suspected infidelity. There had been hints, whispers, and a growing sense of distance between her and James. But she had always hoped that her doubts were unfounded. Now, she was forced to confront the reality of her husband's betrayal. James had always been a man who craved excitement and novelty. Their relationship, once filled with passion and intimacy, had grown stale and predictable. James was seeking something new, something that would reignite the spark that had once defined their love. Unfortunately for Kathy, their relationship no longer fits that mold. The next day, James acted as if nothing had happened. He continued his daily routine, engaging in conversations and activities as if the previous night's events had never taken place. Now, Kathy realized that she would have preferred not to know. The pain of discovering her husband's infidelity was overwhelming. She couldn't understand how he could be so callous and indifferent to her feelings. Was she truly so insignificant to him? Had their marriage become so meaningless? She questioned her own worth and the value of their commitment. James had brought another woman into their home, a blatant violation of their trust. Yet, he had offered no explanation, no apology. It was as if she didn't matter, as if their years together were easily discarded. The betrayal was a deep wound, a pain that she couldn't ignore. Seeking solace, Kathy turned to her friend, Vivian. She knew she needed someone to talk to, someone who would understand and offer support. As she approached Vivian's house, she tried to mask her pain with a forced smile. She didn't want Marcus, Vivian's husband, to hear about her troubles. None of their friends were aware of James's infidelity, and Kathy was determined to keep it a secret. Vivian greeted Kathy warmly, her kindness a comforting balm. But as Kathy observed Marcus and Vivian, a pang of jealousy pierced her heart. They were laughing, teasing each other, their connection palpable. She didn't know the specifics of their conversation, but it was clear that they were enjoying each other's company. Marcus playfully tapped Vivian's butt, and she playfully scolded him. Their interaction was light-hearted and affectionate. As Marcus left for work, Kathy watched them with a mix of envy and longing. She yearned for the same kind of joy and carefree happiness that they seemed to share. Kathy hesitated to confide in Vivian. She feared that Vivian might judge her, might think less of her for allowing James to betray her. But the truth was, Kathy was simply ashamed. She was embarrassed to admit the depth of her pain, the shattered pieces of her life. She also wanted to fix their problems, but she didn't know how. She saw how their love story was changing, and she knew she had to do something before it was too late. Desperation pushed Kathy to the edge, and she needed to do something to save her marriage. So, one afternoon, she sat down with James and told him about her crazy idea. She wanted them to switch wives with their best friends, the Coles. James was shocked at first. He looked at Kathy like she was crazy. But then, a strange look came over his face. His eyes lit up with excitement. It was like he'd been waiting for something like this. Kathy felt a mix of feelings. It made her realize that maybe James wasn't as happy with their marriage as she thought he was. But she also felt determined to fix things. They talked about it for a long time. Kathy tried to explain why she thought this would be a good idea. She reminded James about how they had worried about dating each other in the past, but it turned out okay. She thought swapping wives with their best friends would be similar. James was still unsure. He kept on asking questions because he knew their friends really well and didn't want to do anything that would hurt them. But Kathy was really convinced this was the answer. Finally, James agreed to talk to Marcus about it. They both knew this was a big deal, and they needed to talk it over with their friends before making any decisions. The wheels were in motion. Marcus was surprised when James told him about the plan. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. James tried to explain that they would only switch wives for 1 day a week, but Marcus was still worried. He was most worried about how Vivian would react. Kathy seemed really excited about the whole thing. It was like she had been planning this for a long time. She and James went to visit the Coles, bringing Vivian's favorite treats. Everything seemed normal at first, but then Kathy dropped the big news. Vivian was completely shocked. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her mind was racing. She looked at Marcus for help, hoping he would say something to stop it, but he just looked down. She realized he already knew about the plan and hadn't told her. Vivian felt betrayed. She couldn't believe he would agree to something like this without talking to her first. Vivian was angry and confused. How could her best friends do this to her? She tried to hide her feelings, but it was hard. She knew she had to say something, but she was really upset and didn't know what to say. The whole situation was a mess, and she didn't know how to fix it. When the night finally came for the switch, Vivian was determined to show Marcus how it felt. She walked to the Smith's house without looking back. Marcus wanted to stop her, but it was too late. He could only watch as she disappeared into their home. That night, both Marcus and Vivian couldn't stop thinking about each other. It was like a dream for both of them. The following day, Marcus was gentle and caring with Vivian. He was very relieved that the swap was over. However, Kathy didn't want to go back to James. She had enjoyed her time with Marcus and wished it could continue, but she knew she had to stick to the plan. After switching back, Vivian was still upset with Marcus. She felt betrayed and confused, but Marcus apologized and promised it wouldn't happen again. Things seemed to go back to normal, but deep down, something had changed. Vivian realized she didn't want to share her husband with anyone. She loved Marcus and wanted him to herself. She talked to him honestly about her feelings. To her surprise, Marcus felt the same way. He had been afraid to say anything because he thought Vivian might not feel the same. But hearing her say it made him really happy. They both knew they couldn't continue with the plan. They went to the Smith's house to tell them they were stopping the whole thing. Kathy was shocked and disappointed. She had hoped to spend more time with Marcus. James was confused and hurt, but they understood that their friends needed to make their own decisions. But Kathy was still determined to talk to Marcus alone about it. So, she waited until Vivian left to go to the store and went to meet him to understand why they were stopping the arrangement. She was really hoping there was still a chance for them. When she arrived at his door, Marcus was surprised to see Kathy show up alone, as he usually only saw her with James. He offered her something to drink and asked her to wait for Vivian. But Kathy said she only wanted to talk to him. Kathy told Marcus she wanted to keep swapping wives, even though Vivian didn't want it. She tried to convince him that they could make their own decisions. But Marcus explained that he loved his wife and didn't want to hurt her. He said they had to stop the swapping. Kathy didn't give up easily. She tried to get closer to Marcus, hoping to change his mind. But Marcus felt uncomfortable. He didn't want to do anything that would hurt his marriage. He asked Kathy if she had feelings for him, and she said no. Kathy knew she had to stop. She realized she couldn't change Marcus's mind. She left feeling disappointed. Marcus was relieved that Kathy didn't have feelings for him. He didn't want to complicate things with his wife. So, when Vivian came home, he decided not to tell her anything about Kathy's visit. But even though Kathy said she had no feelings for Marcus, her actions spoke differently. She kept showing up whenever Vivian wasn't around, wearing clothes to get his attention. She'd even ask Marcus to go running with her, but he always said no. But Kathy had a trick up her sleeve. After another no, she went inside and told Vivian that Marcus was ignoring her. She said she just wanted to hang out with her friend. Anyone watching would think she was innocent. Vivian felt sorry for Kathy and told Marcus to go with her. He didn't want to because Kathy annoyed him, but he didn't want to hurt Vivian's feelings. On their run, Kathy kept suggesting places to go so that she'd spend as much time with Marcus as possible. But Marcus just wanted it to end. He couldn't take it anymore. Kathy was getting desperate. She started going to Vivian's salon just to see if Vivian would come, so she could find an excuse to see Marcus again. Later on, she started crying and begging Marcus to be with her. She even went as far as saying that she would hurt Vivian if he didn't accept her. Marcus was tired of her behavior and didn't know what to do. Fear began to bring in. Marcus felt ashamed to admit it, but he was scared. Kathy looked like she meant every word. He thought she'd really hurt Vivian. So, he told his friend James what was happening. But James just laughed and said he was being silly to be afraid of a woman. Marcus didn't care about being laughed at. He just wanted James to talk to his wife. James said he would, but he didn't really care. He was more interested in enjoying himself now that Kathy was paying less attention to him. Marcus thought talking to his friend James would make Kathy stop, but it only made it worse. Just when the situation couldn't get any more complicated, Vivian had some big news. She was pregnant. This should have made Marcus happy, but instead, he felt really scared. With a baby coming, there were more people in danger. Marcus couldn't handle this alone, but he couldn't tell Vivian what he was going through. How Kathy wouldn't leave him alone and was even threatening to hurt him. And with Vivian pregnant, it wasn't safe to stay. They had to leave. They needed someone to know where they were going in case something bad happened. They couldn't tell their closest friends, so they told Mrs. Willow, their old neighbor. She was a nice old lady who lived by herself and was always there to help. Marcus didn't tell her everything, just that they had to leave quickly and she shouldn't tell anyone, especially the Smiths. Mrs. Willow promised to keep it a secret and wished them luck. The day before they left, they were getting ready. Kathy came over and knocked on the door, but nobody answered. Mrs. Willow went to see what was going on. She told Kathy that Marcus and Vivian had already left. Kathy was really surprised. She saw their car and realized they were about to leave, but hadn't yet. Mrs. Willow had forgotten she wasn't supposed to tell Kathy everything, so Kathy could see they were planning to leave. Kathy said thank you and left. After a while, Kathy came back. She was really angry. She couldn't believe Marcus was leaving her. She watched Marcus and Vivian together and saw how happy they were. She was so mad. She decided to do something terrible to hurt them. Kathy broke into their car and messed with the brakes. She wanted to make sure Marcus couldn't touch Vivian the way he touched her. Vivian was confused. She didn't understand why her husband insisted on moving, but she trusted him. However, her curiosity got the better of her. As they packed, she stopped her husband and asked him why. Marcus looked up at her with wide eyes, his face filled with fear. He told her that Kathy had threatened to harm her, that Kathy was no longer a friend, but an uncontrollable danger. Fear coursed through Vivian's blood. She felt betrayed. She had known nothing about Kathy's problems, as Marcus had never told her anything. Now, he had revealed a secret that she felt obligated to share. Kathy came to Vivian's salon shop that day when there were no other customers. She made an appointment, claiming that she needed her hair done. As Vivian worked, Kathy dropped the bomb. She confessed that James was cheating on her, a secret she had been struggling to keep to herself. Vivian was shocked and sympathetic. She hugged her friend, offering her all the love and support she could. She had never known that Kathy was dealing with such a difficult situation. Kathy begged Vivian not to tell anyone about James's infidelity, but the next day, the news spread throughout the town. Kathy felt betrayed. She thought she could trust her friend, but Vivian had broken her promise. Vivian insisted that she hadn't told anyone, not even her husband. Kathy didn't believe her, but Vivian was telling the truth. A girl who worked as a cleaner at Vivian's shop had been eavesdropping and had spread the news. Vivian kept apologizing, insisting that she had sworn to keep Kathy's secret. They eventually made up. But Kathy wasn't one to forgive easily. Vivian believed that Kathy's threat to her life was motivated by her anger and betrayal, not by any real intention to harm her. Marcus, however, was more concerned. He realized that they had wasted too much time already. He assured Vivian that when they left town, he would finally tell her the main reason for their hasty departure. Unaware of the danger, Marcus and Vivian didn't know what Kathy had done to their car. That night, they were excited to start a new life in a new place. As they were driving away from town, they got into a scary accident. A car suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and Marcus had to turn the car quickly to avoid a crash. The other car sped away. Marcus tried to control the car, but it wouldn't listen. The car was shaking, and Marcus was scared. Vivian was holding onto Marcus tightly and screaming. Marcus tried his best to save them, but it was too late. The car crashed into a big tree in the woods. Marcus and Vivian died right away. The next morning, the tragic news spread like wildfire, and everyone was talking about the terrible accident. No one could believe that they were dead. The police said someone had cut the car's brakes. They looked at the car very closely to find clues. A police officer named Detective Carter wanted to know who would do such a wicked thing. He went to the couple's house to look around. He wondered why they left so quickly. Their house looked like they were just going away for a short time. There were clothes everywhere, food in the fridge, and everything looked normal. It seemed like they didn't plan to leave, but they had to. Mrs. Willow, their neighbor, was very sad. She started crying. Detective Carter thought she knew more about the couple. She told him that Marcus came to her a few days before they left to say goodbye. She said he looked really upset, but she didn't want to get involved. But there was something strange. Marcus told her not to tell the Smiths, who were their best friends. It was weird that they didn't want the Smiths to know they were leaving. Detective Carter went in to the C. Smiths and was met by Kathy, who was really sad, tears streaming down her face. He felt a pang of sympathy for her. Gently, he started asking her some questions. Kathy, through her sobs, explained she had no idea they were leaving. When Carter asked about her husband, she quietly mentioned that he wasn't home. Before he left Kathy's house, Detective Carter shook her hand. As soon as he stepped outside, he put on gloves. When he got back to the police lab, he found something really important. The clues matched something Kathy touched. For a moment, looking at her sad face, he almost felt sorry for her. But he knew he had to do his job. And so, the truth came out. Kathy Smith was arrested for killing Marcus and Vivian Smith and their unborn baby. The people were curious as to why two families who had been close friends since childhood would destroy each other for selfish reasons. In court, Kathy appeared sad and messy. She cried and pleaded for forgiveness, but it wasn't enough. Judge Murderous, a stern and unyielding woman, saw Kathy as a threat to society. Driven by jealousy and resentment, she had taken the lives of people she once cared about. Despite her love for them, her desire for what she wanted had clouded her judgment. Kathy realized the gravity of her situation and tried to use her last card, claiming she didn't know about Vivian's pregnancy. But the judge's expression remained unmoved and looked at her with a blank expression. Unfortunately, it wasn't still a strong enough reason. Kathy was sentenced to life in prison, and what started as a strange story turned into something much darker and terrible. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, comment, and turn on notifications to stay updated with our latest content.